We also have to remember that prior to Constantine, there was some pretty severe persecution that was going on, particularly under the Emperor Diocletian, but not limited to him, in where not long before the Council of Nicaea, only a couple of decades, people had lost their lives or were living their lives out in prison or had lost limbs for their confession of faith. And so some of the bishops, the leaders that show up at the Council of Nicaea, could very well have had missing limbs or or family members who had died, were either killed or maybe died in prison. And so for them to have held that steadfast confession of faith and then show up, if Constantine wanted to coerce them, well, they've already, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. I don't think they would have been overly influenced by that, because they had already kind of gone through, we're willing to die for this anyways. If you all of a sudden say, I know you're reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but really I want the Gospel of Thomas in there, they would have said, you're out to lunch. We're not going to agree with that. And that's something that's often left out of the conversation, is that though Constantine might have had the ability to influence the Nicaea, none of the actual evidence shows that he did any of that. And let's also remember that emperors love to take credit for all sorts of things, right? Politicians, I know this is very foreign to our day, but politicians like to take credit for things. If he did have any kind of hand in the process, he almost certainly would have mentioned it somewhere. We would have had some whiff of the influence of the great Christian emperor, Constantine the Great. And yet that's not what we get. And so I think we can look at what's actually reasonable to assume, what's probable. That's how we do history, right? An inference to the best explanation, probability, that if Constantine was involved, he almost certainly would have taken credit, and he almost certainly would have discussed it as this hero of the faith. He'd decriminalized Christianity. He'd made Christianity legal. He'd made it no longer... He made it the ability to worship on Sunday, which Christians had been doing for a long, long time, which the previous emperors made very complicated. He allowed that. And so he does take credit for some things. And yet when it comes to Nicaea, there's no whiff of that.